Hi, I'm Mitch Nathanson, the author of Bouton, The Life of a Baseball Original, the biography of Jim Bouton, author of Ball 4. And I want to take a couple of minutes to show you some pretty cool stuff that I found as I was doing my research for the book. Namely, the early drafts of Ball 4, where you can really see how the whole thing came together and how particularly Bouton and his editor, Len Shecter, worked to put together one of the most iconic and influential sports books of all time. So one of the things that really struck me when I was going through the archive was this, which is the final page of an early draft of the book. And here you can really see how they're working together. The typed pages are Bouton's thoughts and words, and the things you see in pencil there, that's Shecter's editing, going through things with pencil, lines, crossing out this, things like that. If you know anything about Ball 4, you remember the final line of the book. You spend a good piece of your life gripping a baseball, and in the end it turns out it was the other way around all the time, and you can see that at the bottom of the page there. So it's pretty cool just to see that. If you believe in the 10 Commandments, this is like looking at the tablets. And so when you go through the archives, you can really see a lot of this. Here's something else I found that was pretty cool. This is an earlier page, and you can again see how they work together. This is Bouton talking about his roommates and how he wants to talk about his roommates. And some of the transcriptions are things that you would read in Ball 4, but others are really Bouton talking to Shecter. And you can see that here. I'd like to talk about this. I'd like to talk about that. And he mentions some things. And when you go through the draft and you see Schecter's notes, you can see Shecter encouraging him in places, discouraging him in other places when he thinks it's maybe not a great idea. Here, when Bouton's talking about his roommates, he wants to talk about Kubek and Bobby Brown, Yogi Berra. He knows some stories about them. Wants to talk about Phil Linz, Fritz Peterson, things like that. And Schecter's note on the side over here is good if it's funny, because remember, this book is supposed to be funny. And that's one thing that Shecter and Bouton really thought were important, was to make this an interesting book, but a funny book, and a groundbreaking book, but it had to keep people's interest. Another thing Shecter focused on was firsthand stories. And you see right there at the bottom, he says, not third hand, which is really interesting. So here's how Bouton got his notes to Shecter. He would read them into a tape recorder or talk them into a tape recorder. They would get sent to Shecter, who would then have them transcribed by Elizabeth Rim, who was a typist for the Lighthouse for the Blind, and then they would come back, and then Bouton and Shecter would edit them. Here's another page, and the edits would come back, or not the edits, but the draft would come back from Elizabeth Rim on onion skin, and this is a page of that onion skin. And here, Bouton is telling a story about the reporters of in Seattle. This is going to be a bad club, the Seattle Pilots, but the reporters and Marvin Milks and Joe Schultz are just pushing the company line that this is going to be a good team, even though it's not going to really be. And if you go through, you can read all of the crap that is being sold to the public. And Schecter's comments on the side I thought were funny. Discuss how you got to believe this shit too. And I thought that was funny because you do see that in the book. Bouton's talking about that. So that's just a few things that I found that were pretty cool. Let me know if you like it.